This was one hell of a My Hero Academia episode, but before we jump into the absolute insanity, I do gotta crack a joke at the hilarious moment with Fat Gum, where my boy is like rushing him thinking Tokiyami's about to get killed, and all he sees is a giant ass about to fall on him, and his one-liner cracked me the hell up. Literally one of the funniest moments in a life or death situation that I've seen in a hot minute. And I love the fact that you can just collectively hear the fandom say, God, I wish that were me, as the ass does come a-fallen. But this episode was brutal, and I mean, you don't wake up Shigaraki and don't have characters turn to dust. Even though last week ends with him kind of jolting up from the electricity, we knew Buddy, who stayed behind to, destroy a couple of things, and to his credit, he did destroy a couple of things, and then in return, Body got jolted up. We knew he wasn't gonna make it, but I think the level of destruction still caught me by surprise, in a good way. Horrible for the characters, life or death for the characters, but amazing for the viewer, because not only do you see, this cloud of smoke during the initial shockwave of crumbling decay, buildings, people. I mean, they actually were taking out named characters. It wasn't even just random civilians running or maybe some background heroes we don't know anything of. I mean, the reaction said it all. These were characters that meant something, right? And then just to see the different scenes from the initial impact of the decay to some of the finalized shots, and even just seeing the characters go completely all out. I mean, I was actually really happy to see characters like Deku get a chance in this episode to try to prevent the catastrophe. Not in the way that they were the most crucial players in this episode. Arguably, there's more crucial players at play from Endeavor to others right now. But we know everyone has a role to play, and I love seeing how they combine their abilities, whether with Todoroki's ice and Deku's kick, and just he went up to 45% in order to try to push things back. I like the fact that it still feels like with this season, it's actually giving the characters, which there seems to be thousands of heroes on screen at any particular moment when you kind of take a step back with the camera. And the fact that it actually feels like they're not just playing around with 2 or 3 heroes and the rest are kind of background fill-ins. I mean, everyone feels like they have a moment or at the very least a chance to shine. And I'd argue this is probably the best utilized My Hero Academia arc we've seen to date. And it's mainly because for the number of characters on screen, it actually feels like they're making as many feel needed as possible, which honestly I can't remember the last time, unless you're looking at some of the big superhero moments like Civil Wars and stuff from Marvel or even DC Comics where characters all combine. Those moments happen very infrequently, but when they do, they stick out for a reason. I think that's exactly what My Hero Academia is doing because of how they're utilizing everyone. The thing that was actually probably my favorite part in this episode was Tokiyami, because he comes in, and I mean, he's the first character, as Fat Gum says, to break away from the fat taxi. And I love how he comes charging in after, saying, you can't take a ride for free like that, and he comes running after him. But to see, Hawk's just wings completely burned, Dabby's about to deliver the final blow, and here he is saying, unlike us, your heroes that you're protecting fight far more dirty. And even though it clearly hurts our boy quite a bit, I like on the fly home sort of a thing, he says you had a reason to do it. I believe that, which we obviously know he did, but in the moment it's interesting to see because these characters in any particular moment can end up dead. I mean, Hawks would have died there had Tokiyami not ended up coming out there. I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts. Maybe you could argue, well, there's a lot of characters fighting around him. Maybe in a different reality, someone would have destroyed the building and his body would have slid to what would look like death, but actually safety. Sure. But for all intents and purposes, they're trying to make it seem had our boy not broken free, broke the rules himself, saying, no, Fat Gum, I'm gonna go save my master here, he probably would have ended up dead. And I like seeing how all the different characters, large and small, are getting their chance to shine, right? Tokiyami being one of the more relevant side characters, of course, but when you look at the cast as a whole, they're really balancing it quite well. And with what Shigaraki's currently doing, I mean, he can now seemingly control the decay, and that is devastating. I mean, it's devastating enough when you can just touch anything and who knows how much is going to decay. You end the episode with Big Boy getting up ready to probably cause even more of a ruckus. It's not looking good, and I truly have zero idea how they can defeat Shigaraki as it stands. I mean, arguably the most deadly opponent they've gone up against. It feels like that. I mean, with his new level of concentration, his new level of power, it very much seems like this is the end of the world. And I mean, ever since they were building up this kind of big war that could happen, they were putting it in the viewer's mind that should this happen and should they lose, Hero Society as we know it would cease to exist because there would be no coming back from that. And even though that was a big threat, it's something that's been on my mind. You can go back throughout all the videos since they brought up. I've mentioned it quite a few times that Hero Society could very well crumble. But to see it to this degree, even though we've seen in terms of like a wide shot, like that level of destruction before from even Shigaraki himself or some of the characters he works with, right? Ultimately though, it's different knowing what we know now, seeing the characters, because this is episode 5 now. We've been fighting ever since episode 1 of this season, and it feels more hopeless than ever, but you know the characters are going to go until their last breath, but that's the worrying part. The characters going till their last breath. We're starting to see characters crumble and die, both on the villain, both on the hero side, and it feels like there's going to be far more deaths before any characters potentially, we can say for sure, aren't dying this season, right? And that's pretty insane. The character I'm most interested in right now would probably be Endeavor in terms of what he'll offer in terms of combat. He's arguably #1 hero, so where is he gonna go? I mean, as they state in this episode, it was around the midway point with like the generals, the military people kind of looking in on the TVs. They're saying like, you know, it took 2 incredibly talented pro heroes to take care of one of these bastards, these Namus, right? And now they have an army of them potentially. Like, what are we gonna do? Shit just isn't looking good. And if they don't have 100% perfect teamwork, as we see with characters running for their lives, they're gonna crumble to dust, or they'll get brutally stabbed, beaten, broken, and honestly, My Hero Academia has never been this exciting in my opinion. And that's coming from someone who's enjoyed every season from the beginning all the way up to where we're currently at. But just to see like this, really in a lot of ways, I can understand why so many people were hyping this one up for so long, because it really does feel like a build-up. A kind of combination of everything we've come to expect with the hero and the villain side, and to see them where they're currently at, like, we've seen so much growth, both on the pro hero and on the student side. So to see them where they're currently standing, it's pretty remarkable, if not terrifying, that even this isn't enough to most likely stop it. If you remove Shigaraki from the equation, there's absolutely hope, right? Even with the devastating Namu, the characters in general that they're fighting, there's hope in that situation. With Shigi now woken up, is there hope? Probably not. And if there is, it's probably after this arc in my opinion. But obviously, only time will tell. They definitely had fun this episode. I was actually pretty surprised by how good the wider shots were. This season's been relatively polished in a very solid way, in my opinion. Great animation, a lot of great close-ups, but even the shots where you can tell, okay, yeah, if you focus in on some of the characters here, the faces aren't that detailed, but just the way they stylize it with the effects, like the test tubes exploding with water, it's just, I'm really surprised by how much more refined this is. And once again, all I can say is it's probably because a movie's not also in production at the same time as a season, which I don't remember the last time that's happened, and I didn't hear anything about a new movie last week when I mentioned this, so that's really my assumption of why it looks so good and why it seems relatively similar to the early seasons before production started to get a little more split between different projects. But either way, incredible episode, emotional, devastating. It feels like there's no hope left, and on one hand as a watcher, exciting because you don't see that too often. On the other hand, thinking about the number of characters I want to see make it to the next arc, that does make me a tad worried. But thoughts and feelings, whether if you're a manga reader or fan of the anime itself, never checked out that source, do let me know what you're feeling. Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're new around here. You can also consider supporting the Patreon if you want to have some exclusive perks such as video shoutouts like Teeny Bopper is getting this week, so I appreciate the support. So see you next time everyone, and take care.